In another bold move by prosecutors in the United States, a California DA has filed murder charges against the adopted parents of Orson and Orrin West. Finally. And like a few other high profile cases across the country, they're going forward without a body. It's time for the Profiling Evil Weekly Crime Recap. Welcome to this week's crime recap on Profiling Evil. I want to start by reminding you of an old case, Michelle Lee Rust, a 20-year-old missing persons case from Baltimore. 24-year-old Michelle ran to a local Walmart during her son's birthday party and never returned. It was completely unexpected. Well, I spoke with Vinnie Politan on Court TV this week about the case and the possible scenarios surrounding the mystery. This is still unsolved. Maybe you can help. I mean, was it murder? Was it her husband's former lover? Was it a pursuit of a new life or maybe a medical emergency? Let's watch.
All right, Mike King, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast. Your thoughts on what happened to Michelle Rust?
You know, I immediately go into these scenarios as I look at these kinds of cases, and I want to understand more what motivated her to go and park near this park. Did she receive a phone call? Was she going to meet someone? There were some indications that there had been some issues in the relationship and marriage in the past. This concern about girlfriends. Again, I'm wondering, hey, meet me at the park. I'm going to tell you something that you need to know. And it might be a reason to bolt out and say, I'll be right back and head out. But I also think, Vinny, from what I read in some of the reports, is that this woman also had a problem with blood sugar and took her insulin pack with her. And you can't rule out things like some type of a hypoglycemic event and that she wanders off and does something goofy along the way. Now, that's kind of out there, but it's a thing that has to be considered, and I'm sure they've searched through all these areas. But those are my immediate thoughts.
Yeah, the diabetic aspect. I'm diabetic. I'm type 1 diabetic. Your blood sugar goes low. You have a hard time thinking. You could panic. One time I was driving, and it was the one time I had a super low blood sugar. I felt like I was almost going to pass out, and I was in panic mode. I couldn't even dial 911 from my phone, which was right in my hand. So I could see something like that potentially happening, and then something happening after that. That's a great point you make there, Mike.
Well, now let's talk about a few of the murder cases in the news this week, namely Orson and Orrin West, Harmony Montgomery, and Mason Dominguez. After a closed grand jury hearing, the adopted parents of missing Orson and Orrin West were arrested and charged with murder. Now, if you remember this case, at Ground Zero, it was a small community of California City. It was there that the parents made a public statement claiming the boys simply disappeared. Now, a lot of you didn't buy it. A lot of you had trouble with the statement. But if you go back to my earliest videos in the case, you're going to remember that I questioned whether those boys ever made it to California City or not. You know, they lived before that in Bakersfield, and it always troubled me. You know, it's human behavior to try to distance ourselves from distasteful events in our lives. Some people consider this kind of a flight response. Now, I like to think of it as children out playing or doing something like playing army when they were little. When something goes wrong, one of the participants invariably shouts out, "Hey, do overs." Well, is that what Travell and Jacqueline yelled was do over when something tragic happened to those boys? And it prompted this sudden move to California City. By moving, they distanced themselves from their neighbors, parents, or schools where somebody might ask, "Hey, where are the boys?" You know, from the beginning, Chief John Walker of the California City Police Department indicated that he believed it was a homicide. Well, 3 months into the investigation, Bakersfield Police Department took the case over. Now, many theorize that it had to do simply with resources and expertise. Not the case. You see, California City was being filled with people from the FBI, from state law enforcement, from Kern County. Then and even more now, I felt like that move was really because they had figured out that the boys had been killed in their city. You may have noticed I quit talking about the case as soon as that happened. I just personally felt like this investigation was microscopically focused and on a fast track, and I didn't want to create a bunch of noise. Now, speaking of Chief Walker in California City, did you find it interesting? I certainly did that he announced his resignation a few days ago. It reminds me of the high cost these kinds of cases have on everybody involved, including the investigators who end up thinking about these cases day and night. Walker made it clear that he's not being forced to resign. He stated that I think I've come in and I've made a lot of good changes, but it's time for me to move on. He also commented it's getting weary. Well, Chief, I salute you and thank you for a job well done. Well, now the DA made comments in a press conference and today in a hearing. Let's listen in.
This morning, I'm saddened to announce that the investigation has revealed that Orrin and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing. However, I am pleased to announce that this week, the Kern County Grand Jury indicted Trezell and Jacqueline West, the adoptive parents, for the murder of Orrin and Orson West. The indictment charges 5 counts. The first count is murder. Charges them both with murder, with the victim being Orrin West. The second count charges murder, with the victim being Orson West. The third count charges felony child abuse against the person of Orrin West. The fourth count charges child abuse against the person of Orson West. And the fifth count charges false report of an emergency.
You got it. The Wests appeared in the Kern County Courthouse for their arraignment, and they entered not guilty pleas. It was a short and deliberate hearing as the judge bound them over for a prelim. Now, remember, folks, there was no body. But keep in mind, there are more than 500 criminal convictions in circumstantial homicide cases in the United States alone. It really brings hope that people like Orson and Orrin West are going to get justice. But let's not forget about people like Suzanne Morphew or Maya Miliete. They deserve justice, and circumstantial cases are possible to get a conviction. Now, let's talk about Harmony Montgomery for a minute. If you remember, Harmony's that little 7-year-old Manchester girl who disappeared for several years before she was reported missing by her biological mother and a family member who remembered the child also having a black eye dating back to July of 2019. Now, her mother argued publicly that she was trying nonstop to get police and welfare professionals to check on the little girl. But a new report says something much different. In fact, it talks about a caseworker who actually left voicemails for Harmony's mother in January of 2020, but she never returned the calls. It went a full year before DCFS reported that they did 2 additional checks on the child at her father Adam's home, who said apparently that she was with her mother. Well, apparently there was also no effort by DCFS to contact her mother to confirm if she had the child. Instead, it would be another year before that child would be figured out to be missing. And that's when police became aware and they launched a dragnet. I can't get Harmony Montgomery off my thoughts lately. My question continues to haunt me, and I'm going to ask you it again. Why are these children not being reported missing and possibly endangered long before they are? 2 years? I mean, is it because we're afraid to demand to know where those kids are and that they're safe and healthy? Are we more concerned about upsetting one of our loved ones or a close friend rather than calling police and family services to perform a simple welfare check? Well, now officials are saying big changes are coming in the death of Harmony. A new report examining the case of the missing little 7-year-old said that caseworkers visited the girl's house multiple times. Well, my question is pretty simple. If so, why didn't something happen when they couldn't figure out the child wasn't around? 2 years again, folks. Now, officials are saying immediate steps are needed to ensure children are protected and new positions are being added in the government. A new case management system has become a priority, and a better interstate compact is being drafted to ensure that there's better communication on child custody cases. In what seems like a given, the measure includes a requirement that means that the children have to be confirmed safe, and if they can't confirm they're safe, that they report to law enforcement the child's missing immediately. I mean, why on earth is this suddenly a new revelation in how to care for our most prized possession, our children? I am baffled, and I'd like to know how you feel about this. It's great that these measures are being put in place, but it's a little too little and a whole lot too late for children like Harmony Montgomery or Mason Dominguez, the little boy from Las Vegas who was found stuffed in a freezer by his mother's new boyfriend. His case is next. The other night, I joined FBI retired Special Agent Bobby Chacon to review this case on Court TV. We were meeting with Vinnie Politan. Mason Dominguez is a good looking little 4-year-old whose mother and older sister were held against their will in the mother's new boyfriend's house in Las Vegas. Little Mason's dad died just a year earlier, and his mother found a new love in the form of her deceased husband's friend, Brandon Tosland. She was vulnerable, having just lost the love of her life and tragically having to figure out how she was going to care for her young family. The relationship blossomed, and Tosland asked her to move in with him. She hoped it would fill the gap that her children desperately needed as they dealt with the loss of their father. Watch this video I found showing how loving their relationship was, this with his mom and his father. It was heart-wrenching for me as I considered what would soon happen to her as she started this new relationship with Tosland. Let's watch. Soon after they moved in with Tosland, domestic violence reportedly started happening. And before long, Mason's mom was staying in the abusive relationship because Tosland had threatened to kill her children if she didn't. About 10 months went by, and on December 11th, 2021, Mason was either killed or he died from some kind of trauma or sickness. We're awaiting the autopsy results on this case, but the arrest affidavit says that Tosland murdered Mason, stuffed him in a freezer, and then covered him with other frozen items. Mason's mom was told by Tosland that the boy was dead, and he wouldn't let her see him because he couldn't risk losing his freedom. She was chained in her bedroom where she was repeatedly assaulted, and her daughter was confined to another room. Eventually, Mason's mother was able to instruct her daughter to report what was going on to her school teacher, telling her that her mom was being held hostage. Police were notified, and hours later, Mason was recovered and his mom and sister were free. Tosland, he was taken to jail, and he's awaiting trial there, charged with kidnapping and murder. Listen as I respond to Vinnie Politan's questions on Court TV about this case. It was an emotional moment for me as I reflected back on some of the murder cases I handled, including that of a little boy named Ian Wing. I'll never forget the Ian Wings in my life and cases like.
Mike King, let me ask you, and again, if these allegations are true and that's where it's leading investigators, do they need to take a closer look at this guy and figure out who else he's crossed paths with through the years, where he's been? Or from your experience, is it possible that someone accused of something like this could lead a relatively normal life? And what I mean is law-abiding, not killing or abusing other people, and this is the first thing that you do?
Yeah, yeah, and if all of the media reports are accurate, this isn't the first thing that he's done. There's evidence out there that suggests that there was a domestic violence situation in front of a child with his sister a few years ago. And then just a short time later, that thing is pled down, and or no, I believe in that one, the sister actually drops the charges against him, and he walks. Well, that doesn't solve a problem. And then, if the reports are correct, there's another domestic violence event where he actually assaults a woman that he's dating or is living with. And that he ends up getting 90 days of a talk and walk, and he's turned loose, told to do some anger management counseling, and whether that's completed or not, it's unknown. But there's already evidence of an escalation, and I think as the investigators turn this thing upside down, they're going to find additional kinds of things. It looked like there were a number of on social searches, a number of just traffic violations and DUIs and other kinds of things in this background. But this case is one that is going to be really important to look at the behaviors and the escalations in behaviors as he goes through this change. This guy is a little bit charismatic, obviously, to get this woman to move in with him and then slowly start gaining trust. And as Bobby was talking about the evidence, I kept thinking, we're going to see what this child died from. Did he die because he was sick and then they disposed of his body? Or is there going to be evidence that there was a homicide of blunt force trauma or something else? There's still so much information that's going to come out of that house that's going to really paint a picture of who this individual was that committed this crime. And I want to end this case discussion with asking each of you to comment down below about your thoughts on why we're seeing so many of these cases where children just go unaccounted for months and sometimes years. I mean, what do you think we should be doing in these kinds of situations? Here's another question. Can you sympathize with those extended family members who just don't want to rock the boat? I'm really struggling with this one, people. Our children deserve our protection. Let me know your thoughts. And please go over to Court TV and watch the programs I appear on. That is a great team over there, and I love working with them each week. I also like being able to bounce off ideas off of former Special Agent Bobby Chacon. You know, we worked together on the job 20 years ago during the 2002 Winter Olympics Games, and now we're having the chance to do so again, and it is a blast. Now, it's time for you to weigh in on these cases and do so down below. Take a minute, share your thoughts on what really makes your blood boil. Remember, you can find Profiling Evil on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, folks, you can catch Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, don't forget to check us out on the World Wide Web at profilingevil.com. And one more time, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help. And that way you'll be notified on everything that we have coming out. And if you want to give us a little more support, think about our channel memberships. My favorite is the Academy level, where you get all kinds of cool stuff. Well, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.